This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good Erev Shabbos. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to try a subject, a very profound topic, relevant to the Yom Tov of Purim. And with Hashem's help, if we're successful in conveying this message and this understanding, it will revolutionize your understanding of Purim in general. Probably the most well-known pismon. A pismon is a song that we sing on Purim, Shoshanas Yaakov. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. At the end of the Megillah, we sing Shoshanas Yaakov. Now I want to focus on a few phrases in Shoshanas Yaakov and draw your attention to try to study why a particular word choice was used. Let's begin with the word Yaakov. Shoshanas Yaakov. So Yaakov, what could be of note with the word Yaakov? Did you know that we're almost never called Yaakov? Are the Jewish people called Yaakov? Actually, come to think of it, you could study the whole Chumash. We are never called Yaakov. Nowhere in the entire Torah are the Jewish people just called Yaakov. We're usually called Bnei Yisrael. So why all of a sudden when it comes to the Yom Tov of Purim, we say Shoshanas Yaakov? You know, there was a man by the name of Yaakov, and sometimes his name is Yaakov, sometimes his name is Yisrael, but we never referred to the Jewish people as an entity as Yaakov. Also, the word Shoshanas. Anybody know what does the word Shoshanas mean? A rose. Why are we called a rose in the context of Purim? Why are we not called a tulip? You know, tulip Yaakov. Or I like orchids. You know, orchid Yaakov. Orchids, they last a really long time. They're expensive, but if you bring home an orchid, they can last for a couple of months. And actually, a little known fact is, usually, even if they die, you could usually water them and they could regenerate. It takes quite a while, but just, for your information, no extra charge for that. So why aren't we called Orchid Yaakov? Orchid Yaakov. And, if you sang it enough times, I'm sure it would be familiar to you as well. Why Shoshanas? Why Yaakov? And then here's the $1 million phrase that really we need to study. We say Tishuasam Hayisa. Who remembers the next word? Tishuasam Hayisa Lanetzach. Their salvation was for eternity. Forever. What's the meaning of that? Why, when it comes to Purim, do we say that the salvation of the Jewish people was eternal? Obviously, if your life is being threatened and you're saved, then it's eternal. Then it's permanent. Why specifically when it comes to the Yom Tov of Purim do we say that the salvation of the Jewish people was eternal? Okay, I want to share with you a medrash, a wondrous medrash. You ready for this? The medrash tells us on the pasuk in the Megillah, "V'zichram layasuf mizaram," that the memory of the Jewish people will never cease. The Medrash says something astounding. The Medrash says, "Kol hayamim tovim asidim libatel." All the holidays are destined to cease. Pesach will be no more. Shavuos finished. Sukkot, it's all over. When Mashiach comes, all the Yamim Tovim will cease to exist. V'mei ha-Purim lo yavru mitoich haYehudim, but Purim we will always celebrate. You ever hear this medrash? Does this sound somewhat familiar? That in the future, all the Yamim Tovim are destined to be nullified, finished, except for Purim. Purim will be the only holiday in the times of Mashiach. Now I know that's pretty exciting. If we had to pick one Yom Tov that will last forever, maybe, let's take a vote now, right? If you could only have one Yom Tov when Mashiach comes, who would pick Purim by show of hands? All right.
Girls.
What?
Purim for girls.
Oh yeah, Purim, you're not so into Purim? Like, what would you pick? Really? Because you... Okay. Here's... So who's gonna pick Pesach? Raise your hand. Who's gonna pick Pesach? Okay. We got about 40% Pesach. Notice that none of the married ladies are picking Pesach. Okay? Then, who's going to pick Hanukkah? Okay, we have about 40% Pesach, 15% Hanukkah. Who's going to pick Tu B'Shvat? No? Okay. Who's going to pick Chanukah? We did Chanukah already. Sukkot. Okay. Purim. Help me out here. Purim. Okay. But the good news is that it's Judaism is not a democracy, so we don't really care what your opinion is. This is the reality. When Mashiach comes, all the Yom Tovim will become nullified, except for Purim. Purim will be the only Yom Tov that will last until Mashiach comes. And the Maharal comes, the Maharal of Prague. He wrote a sefer on the Megillah called Or Chadash. And you probably heard about the Maharal of Prague. The one thing that everybody knows about the Maharal of Prague is that, what did he do? He made a goylem, right? No, he never made a goylem. It's a fairy tale. You know that? Now, there were many tzaddikim that did make goylem, but not the Maharal of Prague. But that's a story for another occasion. Next time, if they invite me back, maybe we'll talk about the goylem of the Maharal. Now, it's very convenient to be able to make a goylem. Actually, in halacha, let's say you have 9 people, 9 men, and you need a minyan. Wouldn't it be convenient to, just make a goylem? Hey, pull him out of the closet. Then you could say, Kaddish, Kedusha, any event. We're not bringing out the goylem right now. But the question of the Maharal is as follows. The Maharal wants to know, how could the Medrash say that when Mashiach comes, all the Yom Tovim will become batel? We have a great principle. I was looking at these very cool... I never knew that the tzaddikim were so colorful, I need to get one of these get-ups, I think it's... But one of them, where was it? The Rambam. The Rambam got 2. What happened here? Oh no, this is the Ramchal. The only thing is Ramchal didn't have a beard, but whoever made that maybe didn't know that. But the Rambam has 13 principles of faith. The Rambam's principle of faith, one of them is, Ani mamin be'amunah shlema, I believe with complete faith. She'Torah zu loy tehei mochlefes. The Torah will never be exchanged. V'loy tehei Torah acheres me'es habar yisbar shemai. And there will never be another Torah from God. Which means that one of the principles of faith is that the Torah will never be altered, it will never change. That the mitzvahs and the Torah that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai will always be observed, and will never be altered, and we will never deviate from it. So what exactly does the Medrash mean that all the Yamim Tovim will be nullified? How could we say such a thing? Not even one letter of one pasuk in Chumash will be nullified in all of eternity. So what does the Medrash mean that all the Yamim Tovim will cease to exist? I want to share with you a very interesting perspective. If I were to ask you, we're going to take another vote. Now, I'm not telling you whether I'm going to, whether your opinion will actually carry weight, but we're going to take a vote anyway. Okay? Question, poll. Okay? The poll is, which miracle do you think was greater, Hanukkah or Purim? Okay? Who says Hanukkah? Think about it. What was the miracle? Think about the oil. There was only enough to last for one day. Or Purim? And some of you, I think you're still thinking about this question. It's a tough question. Which miracle was greater, Hanukkah or Purim? Which Yom Tov is greater, Hanukkah or Purim? And did you ever hear the Gemara? The Gemara, a very interesting Gemara. The Gemara asks, Esther min ha-Torah minayin. Where is Esther in the Chumash? And the Gemara answers, Ve'anoichi haster aster panai bayemahu. And I will hide my face on this day. And the Vilna Gaon asks, what's the Gemara asking, Esther min ha-Torah minayin? Does the Gemara ask, Yochanan Kohen Gadol min ha-Torah minayin? Does the Gemara ask, Antiochus min ha-Torah minayin? Why is it so important to find Esther in the Chumash? And then, we found 4 letters, Aleph, Samach, Taf, Reish. Then that's referring to Esther. What exactly is the question, Esther min ha-Torah minayin? So Vilna Gaon says that the Gemara's question is more profound than just where do we find the 4 letters, Aleph, Samach, Taf, Reish. The question is like this, and this gets to the crux of the issue in appreciating what happened on Purim. Says the Vilna Gaon, Chanukah, tell them I'm not available. I'll speak to them. Yep. Chanukah, says the Vilna Gaon, was not a big miracle. It was no big deal. Why is Chanukah not a big miracle? Does anybody know historically, when did Chanukah take place? Was there a Beis HaMikdash then, or was there not a Beis HaMikdash then? There was. It happened during first Beis HaMikdash or second? Second. About how much time into the second? In the middle, right, exactly. The Rambam says 200 years in. Pretty much right in the middle. So there was a Beis HaMikdash standing. And if there was a Beis HaMikdash standing, that means God's presence was on the Beis HaMikdash. And if God's presence was there, then there were all kinds of miracles taking place there all the time. That means when they lit the menorah, the westernmost lamp never extinguished. Miraculously. You light a candle, it lasts a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week. If you get a big candle, it can't last for years or decades, and the westernmost lamp never went out. The column of smoke on the Mizbeach, despite the winds, went straight up. If you had meat in the Beis HaMikdash, it never decomposed. There were no flies. If you would go into the Beis HaMikdash, you would see daily miracles. So the fact that oil that could have lasted for one night lasted 8 nights, says the Vilna Gaon, big deal. Who cares? It was not that significant. Chanukah, in the scheme of things, relative to what was taking place in those times, was not really a big deal. Purim was a much bigger deal. When did Purim take place? Purim took place in the 70 years between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. Was there a Beis HaMikdash? No. The Beis HaMikdash lay in ruins. Were there any open miracles that the Jewish people were experiencing? No. Was the divine presence apparent? No. We didn't exactly know where Hashem was. In other words, His presence was concealed. It was hidden. So you say, well then it wasn't a miracle at all. And the truth is, if you read the Purim story, there's not one event in the story that was supernatural. What was supernatural? That Achashverosh got angry at Vashti and he killed her? In the ancient times, kings knocked off their wives on a daily basis. The fact that Esther became the queen, I don't know, the Gemara says she was one of the most beautiful ladies who ever lived. The fact that Mordechai overheard the plot to kill the king, he happened to overhear. The fact that Mordechai told Esther and Esther told the queen, you cannot point to any isolated incident in the Purim story and say, oh, that's a supernatural event. So what exactly was so significant about what happened on Purim? So we have to present the following perspective. And let me give you an important piece of information. We have many Yomim Tovim. The thing is, they all basically commemorate the same event. What do our Yomim Tovim commemorate? Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus. So the Yetzias Mitzrayim were the greatest series of miracles that ever happened in the world. There were 3 million Jews. They were in a country that nobody ever escaped from. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu completely altered the course of nature. The entire mighty Nile River turned to blood. They were infested with frogs, with lice. All the animals died. All their firstborn died. And then 3 million people headed to a large sea. The sea just split open. We walked through the ocean, through the sea, and then when the Mitzrayim came, it came crashing down on them. This was the single greatest series of miracles in the history of the world that ever were, and that will be until Mashiach comes. We were so elevated, we were so awe-inspired by the experience that we didn't feel there must be a God. It was as if we saw Hashem. Zeh Keli v'yanvehu. This is my God and I will glorify Him. And therefore throughout the year we have holidays, we have Yom Tovim that commemorate Yetzias Mitzrayim. Be it Pesach, be it Sukkot that commemorates the clouds of glory that covered us and protected us when we left Mitzrayim. All the miracles, all the Yomim Tovim commemorate Yetzias Mitzrayim. Now I have something very important to tell you. Will those be the greatest miracles that will ever take place in the history of the world? Absolutely not. Did you know that there are miracles that are greater than that? You know what they are? The miracles that will happen when Mashiach comes. When Hashem redeems the Jewish people from the Galus. Did you know that every single miracle that took place in the times of Yetzias Mitzrayim was just a dress rehearsal for the great miracles that will take place La'asad Lavai, before the Geula? So I have Baruch Hashem sons, but I have daughters also, Baruch Hashem. And I know that usually this time of the year is play season, right? Do they have that here in Hasmo? You put on a production, you put on, yeah? You had it already? Okay. I know what that is, basically. You need a lot of practice, right? It's like half the year you spend practicing for the big play. Now, the rehearsal is not the real thing. Because in the rehearsal, you're not always wearing the full costume. You're not always wearing the full regalia. It's not always with the full backdrop. It's not always with the full music. But the real thing, that's the real thing. Yetzias Mitzrayim is what we call Ma'aseh Avos Siman Labanim, for the future miracles that will happen when Mashiach comes. That was, so to speak, the dress rehearsal for the great miracles that will occur when Mashiach comes. Now, when Mashiach comes, those miracles will be so great that people will say, oh, Yetzias Mitzrayim? That was child's play. Leaving Makas B'chayros, Makas Sfardeya, Kriyas Yamsuf, that was like, minor leagues. You know what minor leagues are? In America, let me tell you something about American sports. It's important for girls from England to know about American sports. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about it. In America, we have a game called baseball. I don't know why here they like to kick around this round ball, and they have two nets. I'm sorry to tell you, this is primitive sports, okay? America has real sports. In America, sorry to tell you, you have a bat, and you have a pitcher who's throwing the ball 100 miles an hour, and you have leather gloves. It's better stuff. Sorry. I know the whole world likes soccer, but in any event, well, you don't agree? We'll take it up after the class, okay? So,
it's not better.
What?
It's just rugby with a helmet.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, okay? Anyway, so now, when you start off in baseball, you have something called minor leagues. Minor leagues are, amateurs. But when you make it big time, you're in the major leagues. So when Mashiach comes, people are going to say, Yetzias Mitzrayim? That was minor league miracle. That was nothing compared to the great miracles of the coming of Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, the miracles will be on such a magnificent scale. It will be on such a indescribable way that all the miracles that Hashem used to take us out of Mitzrayim will pale in comparison. So therefore, there is a great sefer called Manos Halevi. Manos Halevi is a commentary on Megillas Esther. It was written by, tell me if you know who this Talmud Chacham was, Reb Shlomo Alkabetz. You ever hear Reb Shlomo Alkabetz? He wrote what? He wrote L'Chadaydi. Very good. Very good. That's right. Give her, what?
Positive.
No, positive. We'll give her after she gets the pocket edition of the Concealed and Revealed. Yeah, that's right. Now the rest of you, though, are going to have to go out and buy it. But the Manos Halevi wrote L'Chadaydi. Actually, something very interesting is that in L'Chadaydi, there are a number of stanzas, about 10 stanzas. And in stanza we say, right, L'Chadaydi Kraskav Nesham Sekava. Then we say Shamar V'Zachar B'Divrei Echad. L'Kras Shav Zchuvanecha. There's a big question. L'Chadaydi, why do we say Shamar V'Zachar? First comes Zachar, and then Shamar. It should be Zachar v'Shamar. Yeah? So one of the simple answers is, because it would say Zachar v'Shamar, it would not spell out as an acrostic L'shloimai chazak, it would say Lizloimai chazak, but that wasn't his name. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is, Friday night we always say Shamar before Zachar, or we say Shamar and not Zachar, because Friday night is the Shamar aspect of Shabbos, the feminine aspect of Shabbos, and Shabbos day is the masculine aspect of Shabbos. But that's a discussion for a different time. Reb Shlomo Alkabetz wrote a Perush on Megillas Esther. It's called Manois Halevi. Actually, he wrote it as Shalach Manos to give to his father-in-law or brother-in-law as Shalach Manos. And in the commentary Manos Halevi, the Manos Halevi explains, what do Chazal mean that in the future all the Yamim Tovim will become Batal? And he says something really amazing. He says it doesn't mean we're not going to observe them. We will observe Pesach, we will observe Sukkot, we'll observe all the Yamim Tovim. Batel means, here's an interesting halacha. Let's say you have a big pot of chicken soup. Raise your hand if you like chicken soup. So that's something so far that we agree on more than anything else, okay? So finally we got some consensus over here. And a worker is, your mother, let's say, is cooking up a big pot of chicken soup. And a worker is walking by, or somebody in the house is walking by, and is carrying a cup of milk. And he trips, and some milk flies into the chicken soup. So now it's basar b'chalav. It's milk and meat. What do you do with that chicken soup?
It's less than a 60.
You eat it. You eat it. Because a little bit of milk goes into meat, there's a rule, batal b'shishim, that if you have 60 times the amount of meat to milk, it's batal. It's nullified. Or let's say a worker is walking by with pig soup, and a little bit of the pig soup flies into the chicken soup. Are you allowed to eat it? Yeah. It's actually a mitzvah to eat it. Do you know that? It's a mitzvah to eat it. It's batel b'shishim. It's nullified in 60. Says the Manos Halevi, when Chazal say that when Mashiach comes, all the Yom Tovim will become batel, it doesn't mean we won't observe it. It means its significance will pale and diminish relative to the great miracles of the future redemption. In other words, when Mashiach comes, Pesach's not going to be a big deal anymore. Because why commemorate a miracle on such a low level when we will have experienced miracles of a much, much greater level? The miracles of Yitzhak, of the future redemption. Therefore, when we say all the Yom Tovim will become batal, means their significance will diminish relative to the great miracles of the coming of Mashiach. But there will be one Yom Tif and one miracle whose significance will never diminish. And that's a Yom Tif that celebrates a miracle of a completely different nature. Everybody knows that in the story of Purim, as we mentioned before, there was nothing supernatural about what happened on Purim. All the events were couched in regular course of life, regular sequence of events. But the fact, now let's think about when the miracles happened. And let me tell you the following story. There was a man in the Gemara by the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. You ever hear of Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya? You know about him?
Yes, he was just before he died, he went to the mountain and the sun, everything, he cried out, tried to get them to help him.
Maybe.
Ben Dota.
Who?
Yeah, is that all he said? Oh, sorry.
Okay. No, but he was also Jewish. It's okay, right? Rav Lazar ben Doda, yeah. That's a good one. Now I'm talking about Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya always was the one to debate heretics and atheists. So he was once in the court of the king, and he was debating in a manner of pantomime. You know what pantomime is? Where without saying anything, they're like motioning their debate to each other. So the min, the heretic, the apikoros, pantomime to Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. They were facing each other, and the pantomime went like this to him. He put his back to him, indicating that, yes, God took you out of Egypt, and He split the sea for you, and He gave you the man, but now He's turned His back on you. He's rejected you. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya went like this to the min. articulating without speaking, Oid Yadai Natuya. His hand is still outstretched to protect us. The Vilna Gaon explains that even though if we were to ask, when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, He took us out Bizroya HaNatuya, with an outstretched arm. He made open miracles. But maybe, let's say in the times of Purim, God wasn't making open miracles. His hand was no longer outstretched. That's a very big mistake. In the times of Purim, even though there was no Beis HaMikdash, and there was no open revelation, and Hashem's presence was not clearly appreciated, Rabbi Shua ben Hanani was teaching, Oid Yadai Natuya. Even though we don't see Him, He is pulling the strings and making miracles in no less of a miraculous way than He did when He took us out of Mitzrayim. We don't see Him, it's not apparent, but His control and His love for us is no less than when He took us out of Egypt. Let me give you the following mashal. We're going to talk about a married couple. So this married couple, they're in their first year of marriage, and everything is like, they're seeing stars, they're in the heavens, they're like, everything is bliss, everything is wonderful, and they're so nice to each other, and they're so courteous, and they're so polite. Question, is this marriage going to be eternal, or is it possible that it won't be? We have no idea. What do you mean? But look how much they're looking at each other, all starry-eyed. They love each other. Can we predict that this will last forever? No. Why can't we predict that this will last forever? Because they never hit one hard time. We don't know how they're going to react in a time of difficulty. You know when we know that it's going to be a permanent marriage? Let's say they get into a little bit of a disagreement, and they're very upset at each other, and they're not even talking to each other. And let's say, after a few days, he comes home, and waiting for him, even though she hasn't said a word to him for a few days, is a scrumptious meal, his favorite dinner. Or what if he buys her something that she really likes? Then we know for the first time that this is going to be a permanent arrangement. Why? Because even at a time of difficulty, even when things hit rock bottom, the message still is that I love you, and this is going to continue no matter what. So really, the only way we know that something is eternal is when the two parties are distant from each other, and even then, they come through for each other. The Vilna Gaon gives the following mashal. There's a father who loved his son very much, but the son was misbehaving, the son was acting up, the son was not behaving properly, and the king had no alternative but to banish his son from the palace. And the son is thinking to himself, does my father love me? Does my father reject me? And the king knew that if he's going to banish his son from the palace, the son may be harmed by a wild animal. The son may be harmed by one of the jealous subjects of the king. So the king sent his henchmen to secretly, behind the scenes, in the bushes, watch out for his son, and if anything were to happen, that they should immediately save the son. So the son is walking through the forest, and all of a sudden a wild animal jumps out at the kid, and in the last second one of the henchmen come and shoot the wild animal. And then a little while later, one of the jealous subjects tries to harm the child. And again, the henchmen come and save the kid. And the kid says to himself, this can't be a coincidence. That must be my father looking out for me. And the son rededicates himself to his father, and his love for his father was much greater than it ever was. So too says the Vilna Gaon, that there were many miraculous salvations for the Jewish people, and most of them did not do that much for Klal Yisrael because we take it for granted. There is a Beis HaMikdash standing, we see Hashem every day there are open miracles, so big deal, there's a Yom Tov of Hanukkah. So the light that was supposed to last for one day, lasts for 8 days, so what? It was a miraculous time. We're flying high with Hashem. Hashem is with us. It did not really elevate the Jewish people in a significant manner. You know how we know that we and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be together forever? Because the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. And we were exiled to Persia. And there are no miracles. And the nations of the world are saying, see, God used to love you, He forgot about you. And the atheists are saying, look, God turned His back on you. And we don't know, There's an idea that when Hashem gave us the Torah, He married us. You know that? Kabbalas HaTorah was a marriage. When Hashem suspended the mountain over our head, that was like a chuppah. When He gave us the luchos, that's like the ring. He married us. So great. We're going to have a great marriage. Yeah, that's until the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. What is that? What happened then? Did Hashem send us away? Did Hashem terminate it? And now we're in Galus. We have no Beis HaMikdash. And Haman decreed to eradicate the Jewish people. So now what? Is our husband, did he divorce us? Did he die? Chas v'shalom. So that was the question the Jewish people faced in the times of Purim. And if even under those conditions, Hashem is pulling the strings, that Vashti should be executed, and that Esther should become the queen, and that Mordechai should overhear the plot to kill the king, and that Mordechai should engender goodwill with the king, and that Mordechai should be wearing the royal clothing, and that Esther could plead to Achashverosh on our behalf, if even at a time that we hit rock bottom with Hashem, Hashem is still pulling the strings to save us, that means that our relationship with Hashem is immutable and will never be severed, and that even at a time of Hester Panim, when the Gemara asks, Esther minat Torah minayin, the Gemara is not asking, where do we find the 4 letters, Aleph, Samach, Taf Resh? The Gemara is asking, how do we know that even when we can't see Hashem and there are no open miracles, He's still with us? Va'anoichi haster aster panai bayemahu. That even in Galas Paras, Hashem, in a hidden way, showed Himself to us to teach us the most important lesson ever taught in Jewish history. You know what that is? Tshu'asam hayisa lanetzach. That the salvation of Hashem is eternal. From Pesach we don't see it's eternal. We just see that when times are good, Hashem will bail us out. From any other Yom Tif, we don't see the eternal nature of Hashem's salvation. Because we never know what's going to happen when we hit rock bottom. Does anybody know? What was the worst sin in the history of the Jewish people? The Egal. Close. Adam. Not bad. The worst sin in the history of the Jewish people, that because of this sin, there was a decree on us to be destroyed. Lahashmid la'aroi goliabed. You know what the worst sin was? Eating at the Suda of Achashverosh. Mordechai said, don't go. You can't go. And because we ate at that Suda, God allowed Haman to make a decree to eradicate every single Jew, man, woman, and child. So probably, would you say at that moment that we were at the meal of Achashverosh, would you think our relationship with Hashem was a 10? From a 1 to 10, what would you rank? It must have been the lowest point in our history. Now, what was the greatest miracle behind the scenes that ever took place in our history? Purim. Now I want to bring to your attention one awesome idea. At what point in time did Hashem begin to orchestrate the greatest miracle behind the scenes that ever happened to us? At the time that we were sinning in the worst possible way and eating at the meal of Achashverosh, at that very moment Hashem was paving the way to save Klal Yisrael. What does that tell us? That shows that no matter how low we fall, no matter how distant we are, no matter how something could reach rock bottom, even then Hashem's love for us is so strong that at that very moment, when we were sinning in such an egregious manner, Hashem was paving the way for the greatest miracle behind the scenes in the history of the Jewish people. This is a lesson we learn from Purim. First of all, the word Shoshana. The word Shoshana means a rose. You know what the numerical value of Shoshana is? Shoshana is the same gematria as Esther. That is why, in the context of the story of Purim, we use the word Shoshana, 661. By the way, where in Tanakh are the Jewish people compared to a rose? We say, Kishoshana bein hachaychem, like a rose among thorns. Look at those words very carefully. May I? Is this for this?
Yeah.
May I? Kishoshana bein hachaychem. By the way, the word Shoshana is 661, the same as Esther. I want you to look at the Seifei Tevos, the end letters. Hey, Mem, Nun. What does that spell out? Haman. Kishoshana bein hachaychem. When were we a rose among thorns? The Rakeach says, in the times of Haman. But we had the Shoshana. Shoshana's gematria Esther. That's why in the context of Purim we say Shoshanas Yaakov. Now what is this referring to? Like a rose among thorns, like one nation surrounded by 70 nations that try to attack us. When was that? On Hanukkah? No, on Hanukkah we were in Eretz Yisrael. All the other Yomim Tovim, we were flying high. We were not like a rose among thorns. Specifically in the context of Purim, we were like a rose among thorns. That's why we refer to the Jewish people as a rose bush. Now, Yaakov, does anybody know the difference in connotation between Yaakov and Yisrael? 2 minutes.
Yisrael's supposed to be hidden. It's more of a tznius aspect to what Yaakov stood for.
Perhaps. The Ramban tells us Yaakov reflects the Jewish people on a low level. When Hashem deals with us, b'derech hateva, in a hidden way. Yisrael refers to the Jewish people on a very high level. When Hashem deals with us in supernatural ways. Usually the Jewish people are Bnei Yisrael. In the times of Purim, we were Shoshanas Yaakov. We were on a low level. Hashem was dealing with us b'derech hateva. And still, we were Kishoshana ben hachaychem. This explains the language. Shoshanas Yaakov tzahalav v'samecha. But the great lesson of Purim was Tshuasam hayisa lanetzach. So when Mashiach comes, the miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim, Pesach, we'll still observe it. It won't be significant. Sukkot, we'll observe it. It won't be significant. But that great lesson, that even when things hit rock bottom, and Hashem is hidden, and we don't see open miracles, nevertheless Hashem's love for us is immutable, and He'll always bail us out. That important message will never be batal, will always be significant. And therefore when Mashiach comes, the rest of the Yom Tovim, they won't be so exciting. Purim will always remain as the highest echelon of celebration for the Jewish people. And we hope this time of the year, which is a zman of great miracles for Klal Yisrael, we need to summon some of that in our times. So Be'ez Hashem, we should be zocheh to see salvation, Yeshuos v'nachamos for Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael and all over the world. Thank you very much. Bracha v'atzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.